afternoon and a warm welcome to the Citizens Chat Show on Civic Space TV. We are streaming on YouTube. My name is Judith Atim. I'm your host, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us on the show. Our topic for today is the 30 years of the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. As you all know, 30 years ago, on the 8th of October 1995, the Republic of Uganda promulgated its fourth and current constitution. This document was, of course, a culmination of a long consultative and often challenging process meant to anchor our nation in the principles of democracy, justice, and the rule of law. Of course, this followed decades of political turmoil. It was hailed as a people-driven constitution, establishing a clear separation of powers, a comprehensive Bill of Rights, and a framework for decentralized governance. Today, as we mark 3 decades of the 1995 Constitution, we stand at a critical juncture. It is a time for reflection, to celebrate its achievements, to critically examine the challenges it has faced, and to discuss its future in shaping, its future role in shaping the destiny of Uganda. And joining me in the studio to actually share their insights and reflections on this are my usual panelists. From my immediate left, Dr. Robert Ojiambo, head of the History Department at Kyambongo University. A warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers and panelists here.
Also with us, we have Dr. Bireete, Executive Director, Center for Constitutional Governance. A warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, and good evening, viewers and fellow panelists in the house.
We also have Mr. Joseph Ochieno, political commentator and UPC Idelogue. A pleasure to have you on the show, Joseph.
Thanks for having me, Judith.
And last but not least, retired Major Awich Pollar, Director for External Affairs at the NRM Secretariat. He's also an advocate of the High Court. A warm welcome to the show.
Thank you, and greetings to our viewers.
So very quickly, this week has been also quite an interesting week. Uganda is marking 63 years of independence, and of course, a happy independence anniversary to all of you who are watching. But as we shift our focus to the Constitution, Dr. Ojiambo, I just want us to reflect, just in 5 minutes, looking at where we're coming from, what the journey has been like over the last 30 years in terms of the achievements. I think let's first start with the achievements, and then we move to the other issues.
Yeah, thank you so much, Judith. Happy Independence Day for our viewers, and I want to congratulate one of my dear friend, Grace Rubale. He has been my colleague at Kyambongo University. 2 days ago, he was elected by Council of Bishops to be the Bishop of Busoga, the 4th Bishop of Busoga. We are just waiting for the 14th of December when he becomes the youngest bishop ever to be in Uganda. I congratulate him and I wish him the best. Going back to our...
Teaching at Kyambongo?
He was teaching development studies.
Ah.
Yeah, development studies, but he's a trained teacher. So I think Busoga is going to develop, in my view. The Constitution, 30 years of constitutionalism. You know, when the NRM was taking over power, they found when a country was in tatters, rebels had taken over different parts of Kampala. The country was almost lost hope, especially that short period of the junta of Tito Kelo Lutua, when he had taken over from Obote. The country was somehow confused. And I remember one of the historians, Ferris Mutibwa, he wrote a book then entitled The Fulfilled Hope, that it was a hope for this country. And that is tied by the speech that was given by the president at the parliament veranda there, when he said that the NRA's coming to Kampala was not going to be just a mere change, but he thought, and he said, I think, he a change of guards, and he said, I think this is a fundamental change. And he explained what a fundamental change was going to be, and one of the issues he emphasized was to restore democracy. And there was no way you are going to restore democracy without constitutionalism, which is run by a constitution. So in 1993, a process began to come up with a constitution. And in 1995, we had a beautiful book, which was approved as the 1995 Constitution of Uganda. This constitution had a number of things. One of the very good articles in this constitution was Article 1. All power belongs to the people, who shall exercise it, blah, blah, blah. Later, when we are looking at how that has not worked, I will tell you that the people added there something which is not written, but they added there that the power belongs to the people with guns. The other thing that was very good in that constitution was a section which was chapter 4 of the constitution. If you are an American, you'd call it the Bill of Rights. It was just a replica of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Everything talking about rights was there. Very beautiful. And people said, wow, this is the thing we want. People celebrated and said, yeah, with the Bill of Rights, I think Article 1 is going to function very well. The other element that was in that constitution that was very, very good was decentralization of government, of course, which later comes with the Decentralization Act that later came later. Because that decentralization would really give people their wealth, their resources, their say, because you govern yourself at the lower level there from LC1 to LC5 at the district. Of course, when you come to look at it, in the initial stages, it was one of the very beautiful things, and so many countries came to benchmark Uganda, including Rwanda, Kenya. Of course, Kenya now has a better decentralized system. And they got the idea from here. For them, they didn't want to remain at the district. They formed the counties. And the county in Kenya is not a county in Uganda. The county in Uganda, the county in Kenya is bigger than districts. In fact, it's an amalgamation of many districts. And many other countries that came here to benchmark our constitution. The other very good thing, and which was a success about our thing, was the law governing forces, army, police. I may not be particular in most of them. It really stipulated a lot of discipline. And the above thing was that the military would be subordinate to the citizens, to the civilian rule. And the people liked that and said, yeah, this is something that we would want, and they jubilated for it. The other very nice thing that took a lot of time, but of course it took a semblance of the earlier constitutions. Remember, Judith, this was the fourth constitution Uganda was having. The first constitution was the Independence Constitution, then 1966 Constitution, then 1967, which was almost going back to the 1962 Constitution with the exception of the abolition of kingdoms and other things. So, Judith, the Constitution came up with very good articles. But you say you wanted to restrict me to speak about only the good side.
We are coming to
but
I
want to say that the Constitution was a very good document, and in the initial stages from 1995 to 2005, when the whole issue starts, a lot of amendments begin taking through. So the constitution, I can say, was like a healthy, a very good, healthy baby who was born healthy, and people saw a lot of hope in this young man. Some thought he would be a good athlete, some thought he would be a good academician, some thought he would be a good preserver or protector of the country. Some thought he would be a good advocate for rights and so many things. Unfortunately, this kid was later attacked by Kwashako.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah Bireete from Kwashako. Was it also attacked by Kwashako or some other disease? But we'll come to that later. I want your thoughts on the good, the progress that we made in the 30 years of this constitution. What were our biggest achievements in your opinion?
I've taken long without hearing that word. Kwashako.
NRM removed it.
It is
No.
there in the village.
No, I
there.
know.
Including polio.
No.
It is there.
Malnutrition is everywhere, including my district, Bushenyi.
In fact,
You see
Bushenyi
rates
one time
of-
surprised the people that had
Mal-
more minority kids.
Yeah. So malnutrition is there, but the use of Kwashako is what has disappeared. Happy Independence Day, fellow citizens, and I hope you spent the day, reflecting on the future of this country. As a country, we are at crossroads. Crossroads because of the illusion that came to be out of the 1995 Constitution. But let me start with the good. As a grand norm or the legal framework for the country, the Constitution was generally a very good document, save for the provisions limiting political party activities. The process of making the Constitution for the first time was bottom-up, involving citizens. We had the process of consultations in universities, in secondary schools, and up to sub-county level by the Awich Commission. In a presentation of the report of the Awich Constitutional Commission report, which is known as the Awich Commission because he was the chair, they had recommendations from 25,000 groups, including gatherings, petitions, meetings, memoranda, 25,000. Those are then the number of recommendations. Of course, were several. The commission did their best in aggregating the wishes and aspirations of Ugandans on how they wanted to be governed. I think that given the terms of reference, the commission had been given key among them, which was to consult the people on how they want to be governed. 2 was to address issues of human rights that were emerging from the Justice Odell Commission. 3 was to establish a framework for peaceful transfer of power. Among others, they had about 5. So when you look at the views of the people, I think you could score the commission 100%. Even they had to find, Justice Odoch was telling us the other day, as he came to officiate on the commemoration of the tree planting exercise, that he had to sit and think what words to use and how best to craft the issues in the draft constitution. Because after the report, they had to make now the draft constitution that the Constituent Assembly debated. If you go to the Constituent Assembly, 218 delegates were about there. Best brains we had in the country. And the viewers, I want to invite you to watch the documentary we have made out of that journey of the making of the 1995 Constitution and the key amendments. If you look at the quality of debate, if we had such a parliament today, Uganda would be a first world country, whether we want it or not. Because such brains would not allow the turbulence of governance we are going through to happen. What were the positives in the Constitution, other than what I've said? It had a framework for protection of fundamental rights and freedoms, had a framework for centering the people in our governance from Article 1 to 3, how the people should exercise their power, how people should be central, but also the duty of the people as guardians of the Constitution. And that's the job we have failed badly. We will come to that. When you look at the institutions across board of governance and accountability, Human Rights Commission, Inspectorate of Government, Auditor General's Office, Law Reform Commission, Equal Opportunities Commission, you would think that even the institutional framework was good. And then to crown it all, the doctrine of separation of powers, the independence of the judiciary, properly pronounced and standard. Then the work of Parliament, cut out Article 79, protect the Constitution. The Constitution had a framework, a chapter, first of all, on all critical sectors: environment, land, the debate on whether land should belong to the people or the state, the question of system of governance that remained unresolved, and in the wisdom of both the Awich Commission and CA, then they created a provision for people to decide, and they carried the two systems. Of course, scholars would debate as to whether a movement which is indigenous to Uganda, movement system, whether it was right to carry it as a system of governance or not, especially given, and I will expound on this at the time of challenges, given that whereas Article 68 of the Constitution provides that when one system is on operation, the other goes in abeyance, given the fact that the movement never went in abeyance, except one group of people hijacked what was the movement system and called it a political organization. And we have two systems running side by side, and I will explain this because that's my opinion. Then you have of course, the chapter on amendments, where I think also the framers of the Constitution fell short, or maybe they were tricked or hoodwinked, because the critical articles that were expressed by the majority views of the people should all have been entrenched, including term limits. Because if you look now at the views by Professor Sempebwa, who chaired the Constitutional Review Commission, he puts it clearly that everybody wanted term limits, even when they didn't know the legal terminology. But every person who appeared in the Awich Commission wanted a limitation as to how much an individual could stay in power. And again, in his own words, he says, at all occasions they interfaced with the president kept telling them that term limits were very important, because the problem of Africa are leaders who refuse to retire. And they thought it was a given In Dr. Matembe's words, she kept saying that when the Awich Commission interfaced with the president on that issue of term limits, and the first proposal of the commission was to entrench it, then the president said, no. There is no need to entrench it. I think this is common sense, and a person would have to be mad to tamper with it.
Sarah, it is called reverse psychology.
Yes, that's what he used. So in Matembe's, Dr. Matembe's words, because I wasn't there. You know, the time of making the constitution, I was in senior 3, senior 4. And yesterday I met a number of youth who were at the watch party at the office. Most of them were not born, and a few of them were 2, 3, 4 years old then. It's been a while. And as I conclude, my call to Ugandans is that we are at an important crossroad as a nation. We must reflect, we must revive the spirit of this constitution and claim back the majority views, wishes and aspirations of Ugandans as contained in the Constitutional Commission report or the Awich Commission. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sarah. Joseph, let me come to you. Still, we're looking at the good side of things, that the Constitution, the progressive side of our Constitution, what were the achievements that it gave us in the 30 years that it has existed?
First of all, I find it very hard to locate anything in this Constitution which is not normal common sense for anybody who should be a Democrat. And so, like Mr. Museveni was telling his group, that should be commonsensical. So if you say 2 terms, it's 2 terms. Bill of Rights emphasized that which average decent nation state, does not believe that power should belong to the people and citizens should have basic rights. And now, in any case, if we have a Bill of Rights entrenched in our Constitution, we have one of the key advocates of the Constitution who has been grabbed from Nairobi and brought it to Uganda and is languishing in jail, and there's nobody who can explain the circumstances under which he's continuing to be detained. For the length of Besigye's detention and torture, except for Idi Amin's regime, he couldn't consider that to happen in the administration. In the last 2 days, there is a video clip doing the rounds of a handsome young police officer, must be educated. He's lucky got a degree because there are no people who can't afford degrees because of the current system. He all of a sudden has a degree, and the senior police officer slapping somebody in the petrol station. You need Bill of Rights for that? Except under Idi Amin. I don't know any administration since independence, certainly not under UP's administration, that a police officer, a senior police officer of that rank, would slap a citizen. So, I go back to this Constitution 30 years today. Was it necessary? No, it was an NRA smokescreen to try and justify their existence. They wanted to give Ugandans something to latch on. And poor Ugandans, many of them, just like many of them who somehow bought onto the NRA, rushed to the bush, came and bought into it and thought it was something. I'm saying the 1962 Independence Constitution was an absolutely fine constitution. The one thing, and Sarah tends to repeat this, and it's important, that it was bottom down because citizens were involved. For parliamentary Democrats, they would argue that people make their representation through their elected representatives. The 1962 Constitution was one.
Did you say bottom down?
Bottom up.
He said bottom. No, he said it was from up bottom. 1962.
No, I say
He was talking about
I
the
said what Sarah
1995
said,
Constitution. He was just emphasizing Sarah's
Yes,
earlier
Sarah's
point
point.
that's about the
As a
consultative
credit
nature
to that.
of, yeah.
And I'm saying that in parliamentary democracies, we all recognize that members of parliament exercise the powers of the people as entrusted to them. And I'm saying 1962 constitution was a democratic constitution in the sense that political parties and organizations and leaders and kingdoms, you know, and district regions, you know, got involved in the process and promulgation of that constitution. You could argue on behalf of their people. The net improvement here is that, well, in this case, the ordinary people, in a way, directly participated. That's always the nearest rate. But that, while there were consultations under trees, many people were consulted with their hands at the back. While there were consultations under trees, 1/4 of our country was at war when the constitution comes. And while there were consultations for this NRA constitution, political parties were barred. Now, fast forward, because it's 5 minutes, the promulgation time. These decent citizens, somehow, thankfully, lucky many of them cannot be found under the current UPA NRA apartheid educational systems. So this is a fantastic system because thanks to the system of education that existed at the time, lest we forget, you know, and the culture, national culture. Somehow somebody says a constitution is promulgated and political parties are banned, and they codify Article 269, banning political party operation. The conversation we're having today, including some of the conversation we're watching Sarah have a debate yesterday on television. How can I hail that document? So, granted, it was a national document. We agreed with it in many ways. Of course, we had no option, particularly those of us who don't live in the bush. Term limits and age limits were brought in. But term limits and age limits were brought in deliberately and on record, an open record, that it was targeting old Milton Obote, who was thought might require to return. So let's put age limit, you know, term and age limit. Obote was never interested in returning to power. And in any case, he was not that kind of person. The thing caught up with his gaze. In any case, anyway, shockingly, there were an appropriate provision, both age and term limits, you know, codifying them in the Constitution, in any case. So, if only I were to have gone ahead and sort of hailed it, regardless of the circumstances, that it was directed towards an individual rather than an institution, because it's not surprising, what is not there, the thing is killed. And the Master Chief honor of the Constitution is enjoying the privilege of the Constitution. And even as I was saying, like, thinking like that, I was saying this, Judith, that come to think of it, constitutions, even UPC has a constitution. And our constitution will be the oldest political party constitution in this country. But UPC has the party headquarters, which is occupied by people who are not mandated by our members. So documents are neither here nor there. It's important for us to have a national constitution. And what I liked the other day at the tree planting, and you, Sarah, as a Center for Constitutional Governance, you did a fantastic job, and you've done a fantastic job on this occasion, regardless of my own opinion of this constitution, and regardless of the reality of this constitution, but you bringing up the concept, context, and actually the celebration, and highlighting the issue of constitutionalism, and so those tree planting things at the Constitutional Center, for which I was pleased, but also a privilege to attend, and also for you guys involving young people to be part of that, including, lest those who may not have watched know that young people also went ahead and planted trees for their own future. Fantastic. Justice Odoki was talking about American Constitution, the oldest Constitution. Is it the oldest? Among the oldest Constitution. But talks about how it has been amended sort of 17 times in over 200 years. And then, of course, for him, he's a diplomat, fantastic gentleman, Justice Odoki. But then, you know, saying that, you know, American Constitution has been amended 17 times in 200 years. I wonder how many times Ugandan Constitution has been amended, including critical elements of it, provisions that include areas that should have been entrenched and only subject to a referendum, include age and term limits. So here we are. it's, as a panel, we have to have a conversation. I've got to give my views and thoughts on these things. I'm pleased to say that the day that constitution was being promulgated, for me, I was busy mourning. I was grieving between myself, actually, between London and Milton Boat in Lusaka, having conversations about these things. We were very critical about some of the members who were in the CA. Thankfully, particular individuals moved out of that CA during the course of the promulgation. So they, simply because of the absence of political party representation. And in any case, the other thing also is the fact that, Dr. Ojiambo, that a constitutional assembly in which you have 2 seats for political parties and 10 seats for soldiers, ain't a surprise that soldiers are today in charge. My point is that we told you guys so, but people thought it was,
But Joseph, I'm just curious. Are you trying to say the 1962 Constitution and the constitutions thereafter did not have any major gaps that the 1995 Constitution sought to cure, irrespective of your argument that this 1995 Constitution was basically to hoodwink Ugandans, and it was basically aimed at Obote at that time? But are you saying there were no gaps in previous constitutions?
I did not say it was aimed at Obote. No, I said certain provisions were. Number 2, I did not say it's necessarily a bad document, except that I'm shocked that framers of this could go ahead and dance in the streets with Article 269 of that Constitution. Any framer, and I've always challenged all of them, you know, with Article 269 banning political parties. And anybody in NRA with a conscience to say that you boast and you just thump that you had a consultative process for a constitution when you knew the consultation was done with political parties banned. And the only constitution that I know, constitutional process, where political parties are banned and not participating anywhere in the world is an NRA constitution. And the young Ugandans ought to know that. 1962 constitution, no, we can discuss that in any case. I know that constitution, and the total law, I'm flanked by lawyers, constitutions are amended. So in any case, part of actually the argument we made actually in the late 1980s, we didn't object to this process by this hour. We're simply saying that, look, instead of wasting money through this process, why don't you just amend, particularly in this case, the 1967 Constitution, or just go back to the 1962 Constitution and make constitutional review where necessary, and then proceed with it. So 1967 Constitution, of course, it had entrenchment of a special position for kingdoms, and particularly a special position for Buganda. That obviously brought in the problem in 1966. That led to the interim constitution, and it was interim, 1966, which basically temporarily banned the operations of the kingdom, and 1967, which formally banned the kingdoms, entrenched the position of the presidency versus prime minister. But the rest, as I said, neither here nor there. My point is, with or without Bill of Rights, with or without term limits, some of these things are clearly common sense. But anyway, this is where we are. I'm simply saying, we told you so. Our monies were wasted in the Constituent Assembly. Our monies were wasted in the Commission. Our time was wasted. And all that NRA did was to extend its illegality from 1986 to 1989 to 1995, 10 years. And here we are, 40 years, and we are discussing the document which was part of the vehicles, part of the equipment we used. The principle of constitutional making process, not bad, I don't criticize.
Well, thank you. Let me have your views, Major, on the good side, the achievements, but I'm sure if you also have something that you want to respond to in line with what Joseph just said, you also have the microphone for that.
I would definitely pick up from where he has stopped, particularly when he mentions that one, we could have continued with the 62 Constitution with minor amendments, and also he mentions the illegality of NRA. Maybe I start from the illegality. The illegality is that there's a famous professor called Kelsen. Kelsen is famous for Kelsen theory, which talks about the legalization of the change of regime. He was a professor in Austria, and he was a judge in Austria as well. So Kelsen says that if somebody takes the force of arms, it takes government by force of arms or whatever method, and he establishes himself as a government, you forget about the legality. And that is why NRM came by legal notice number 1 of 86 to say today we take the reins of power. And to Kelsen, it's perfect. And if you try to overthrow it one day after, you commit treason. No, you commit treason. That is what Kelsen says. Now, from that, therefore, you need to then say the question of illegality is a keyword, because the reign of power of state of government was taken by legal notice number 1, and it assumes power of the state, and that is it. Now, about whether or not this is worth celebrating, I am saying it is worth celebrating. And I'm glad that we are here being hosted by CCG, Center for Constitutional Governance. And if this organization didn't value and agree in that document, except for their complaint, which they keep on raising, is that they agree it's a constitution. And that is why they established this center for constitutional governance. And it is not a center for any penal code. It's not a center for any penal code.
I don't think any of us disagree.
It's not a center for any penal code. It is the birth of that constitution that gave birth to this center.
Really?
For which I'm proud. Now, about the good side that you want, there are definitely many good sides. First, this constitution has kept the country together. In these years, we haven't seen any Nile Republic broken like they had argued at one time. Northern Uganda seceding, or Kasese Republic in Kasese, or anything. We have been kept together as a country. Remember, at the same time, many countries collapsed, possibly due to their weak constitution. Somali, Sudan, and the rest, Yugoslav Republic. So because of this constitution, it has held us together, because people came to believe in the spirit of the constitution, the oneness of the country, and people respected it despite other views of other people. So that is one achievement, of course, for this constitution. I would also like to say the goodness of the constitution is that it's a living document. It's a living document. It grows and grows old, and therefore, like every unity of opposites, even in human being, in a organic life, our body system builds while the other cells are dying. And therefore, the constitution has been a living document that it keeps developing by amendments, and therefore it keeps matching up with the pace and the rate of development of the country. And that is what keeps it a living document. So we have it. It has also overseen development. By the way, the test of a legal system, whether constitutional law, ordinary law, is the test of progressing a society, developing a society. A bad law makes a society stagnant. And sometimes it takes experts to study that we are actually stagnant because of our legal regime. A flourishing society it flourishes with its legal system. Even the days of Napoleon, once you get codes, which codes conflict with the aspirations of the people, that society will not develop. And we have seen it. You can categorize it downwards, whether it is in the life expectancy, whether it is in the infrastructure of roads, whether it is in whatever way, GDP and the rest. We have been able to move forward year in, year out because of a good legal regime. And the mother of all legal regime is the Constitution. Also with this is that this Constitution over these years has helped us to develop many laws because the Constitution is a grown norm. So provisions are operationalized by acts of parliament. Just take any provision. I don't know. I was told that a good lawyer is not the one who crams the law, but knows where to get it. But I think I can guess. Article 219 of the Constitution provides, for example, for National Security Council. And therefore, when such article provides for National Security Council, it therefore provides that Parliament shall enact laws for the security of the country. Now, therefore, Parliament goes and sits down and legislates on a law like the National Security Council Act. National Security Council Act, therefore, provides for procedures or manners in which the security of this country is governed, and it is there. So this constitution gave birth to many laws which have helped to govern these countries. Nearly every provision has been operationalized by an act of Parliament, whether it is children's provision or what, all this the Bill of Rights provision that we are talking about. You remember, it led to a law called Human Rights Enforcement Act. That act came about because of Article 44, which is in the Constitution, where it erodes or it kills the usual defense of Attorney General, where a government officer who commits violations of human rights would hide under the defense of Attorney General. That used to Attorney General, was doing his work. Or even a defense of a superior command. There used to be a defense of a superior command. When a soldier does this or a police does this, and they say, no, Mia was following a superior command. So a defense of a superior command was a very good defense in law, but now no longer sustainable because of this. And all this were a birth of provisions of the Constitution, because Parliament could allow that to develop. And of course, jurisprudence. The Constitution allowed us to argument this in courts of law, and therefore argumenting these laws in courts of law, where parties come before the courts for interpretation, has helped us to argument our courts of law, and we have set many precedents to this extent. So, over and above, we couldn't have contain ourselves to the 1962 Constitution, or whether 67, simply because society had developed so much that new things had to capture it, whether in terms of technology, in terms of expansion, the size, both the quantitative and the qualitative development of the society had developed so much that that Constitution could not hold the society as it was. And that is why there's always a need to have a living document. So the Constitution came, it could not only rely on the old, because the old society had moved past it. As I said earlier, it had moved past it, whether in quantitative form or even in qualitative form. The cultures inbuilt there, the aspirations of the people in there, the technology in there, it has so changed that you couldn't have such an old law or such an old Constitution to hold this society. Therefore, the coming of the 1995 Constitution was good. It has helped so much, and here we are. We are being hosted by Center for Constitutional Governance, which is
Awich, you're a fantastic, you're a fantastic entire school guy. And by the way, just
yes,
for the record,
I am.
He's putting on an entire school thing just to compete with me on my blue Bireete. But Awich, if you don't mind, the 1962 Constitution was only 1962. American Constitution, 200 years ago. Do you know how many times the NRA Constitution has been amended? So that American Constitution only 17 times, and yet America is the most technologically advanced nation state. And you're telling our young, fantastic, non-suspecting viewers that, well, technology moves so quickly, so fast that, well, we really had to go for this one in order to cater for them.
You see, I've told you that Constitution could not hold because we had developed both qualitatively and quantitatively. The rate of development at the time the American Constitution made, and so far as it has gone with what you say, the 17 times, cannot be compared to our rate of development. Do you know, listen, don't laugh and listen to me. Do you know that a country like Sweden now, the rate of development, it develops by 0.0 something. And you find Uganda is developing by 7 point something. The rate of development are not the same. Check on Google. You look at a country like Netherlands. They said this year it has developed by 0.0. In other words, they have already achieved that. They have achieved that much, that not much changes in qualitative.
Okay, so I don't want to.
So we have moved much
Could I
faster
come in
and
whether we
higher
needed a
than
constitution?
them.
I don't want us to drag this. I want us to look at, and of course, yes, I'll give you an opportunity to express that. But I want us to now look, we've talked extensively about the achievements. I want us to now look at where this document has fallen short over the last 30 years.
Yeah, I begin by trying to, I know I will not resolve, trying to resolve whether we needed a constitution or not. I'm a student of history. In 1789 in France, the first thing that was demanded by the people or the National Assembly was the promulgation of a constitution. That did not mean that France did not have a constitution. France had a constitution but had been abolished 170 years ago, and therefore the Bourbon monarchies had used their own I am the law and I am the state and I am who I am to govern the country. Likewise, in 1962, I mean in 1995, when the constitution was passed, or when NRA came here in 1986, it would have been very difficult. Which constitution do you use? The 1962 constitution had been amended in 1960, had been abandoned in 1966. In 1967, we had a Republican constitution which had been overthrown by Idi Amin. And later, when the UNLF government came, it tried to bring back the 1967 constitution, but there were a lot of problems with it. And that's why we had the confusion that ensued up to 1985 when the government is overthrown by Tito Okello. So I think, in my view, it was a good idea after the 1986 Bush War that people reorganize the country and come up with what Sarah called a grand norm of everybody now. Those who believed in 1962 Constitution, 1967 Constitution, would now come and get a meeting point. And in my view, there was an attempt to make that meeting point on a larger scale. As Sarah said, and many people would say, I think in this country, a person who has studied this constitution most is Oloka Onyango. When you read his commentaries, he points to you areas which had issues and areas which had successes. But the biggest problem, as I said in my beginning, was that the person that was given to groom this constitution did not fulfill his role, and that is the NRM government with their leader Yoweri Museveni. They were supposed to be these people who look after children are called what?
Nannies?
There is a better term.
Babysitters?
No. They
Child
were midwife. They were supposed to be.
The babies.
Yeah, they were supposed.
Those ones help in birthing.
Yes, birthing,
Yes.
and then looking after the baby until he overgrows that infantry and becomes a baby that anybody can look after, was NRM. And unfortunately for the 1995 Constitution, the NRM and Museveni were both the mother and the midwife, and later the owner of the constitution. And that's where the problem was. Judith, have tried to look at the processes that Sarah was trying to look at. On a whole, they were very good, but there were a number of problems that would really show you that this constitution would have problems. I'll give an example, and I've talked about the concept of the midwife, who was Yoweri Museveni. The midwife wanted to use this constitution to become the heir, and the only heir, and that's where there was a problem. Number one, he makes sure that a lot of power is given to the office of the presidency. Many articles, and that has been the biggest problem of this country. If you look at our biggest problem, why Electoral Commission cannot work well, why the police cannot work well, why it cannot work for people, is because of that power. About 46, 47 articles are just putting powers. In fact, if there is a the person the constitution came to serve in this country was the president. He has almost taken over all the powers from the people. And you remember there was a commission other than the delegates. There was a commission of 10, which was chaired by the president himself. And that commission reported to the president daily. Because for me, I've spoken to many delegates, and they had frustration in that commission. That some of the things that they would agree on in the plenary would be changed by that commission, and the next day you would have a different thing. Like what you are talking about, entrenching some things. The delegates were very serious to entrench on a number of things, but the commission would cajole them in the next day. And that's why the regrets, if you have people like Matembe.
Yeah, because it was a project.
In fact, Rwamushana one time had a lot of problems with our own Matembe, because they were frustrated by the commission on many issues. And I've talked to many people whom I don't want to mention here. So that was one of the big problems. Not doing a constitution to an extent that I have thought, and this is my thinking, and which I still build on, that it became a tool. Instead of the constitution becoming a tool for growing democracy, it became a tool to sustain NRM and Yoweri Museveni in government. And you have seen this successfully happening. So because of that, the constitution got some hiccups. Because you see, there is a difference between a constitution, the paper and the wordings on them, and constitutionalism. Constitutionalism will demand that you just don't have a constitution. You must have a number of other things. For example, constitutionalism would need that people are civically informed, because the constitution in Article 1 is giving the people the power to defend this constitution. And I think it is Article 4, which even says that if anybody tries to play around with Article 3, if you try to play around with this constitution, you are allowed. You are allowed to do anything to defend this constitution. Yes, when you read it and understand it.
So you can go to the city square and mobilize people.
Yes, and mobilize people. But now the trouble is, it is giving these people power, but you have a very low civic space. The civilians do not have enough empowerment to understand what they are doing. So constitutionalism would demand that you have a well-educated civilians. The other issue which has affected constitutionalism is what I have already talked about. The powers given to the president and his government have not allowed the constitutionalism to take place, because most of the Bill of Rights, the water view, sometimes will contradict with the leader. Because if you read, for those who read democracy in depth, the leader must be trimmed. His powers must be trimmed. But most of the leaders in Africa govern us because they have a lot of powers, and therefore you cannot trim them. And therefore there is a ban. And always when there is a ban, human rights are the casualty. They are the casualty. You have seen the black mambas who are attacking the courts, and the courts are now very fearful that they cannot make any decision. It started with the black mambas. Then the other issue that all the constitutional makers did not look at very carefully. There have been an argument on this federal and no federal. And for me, I have always argued that the lawmakers were very, very clever and serious to consolidate a country, not to accept that type of government. But they were slow to come up with a very proper alternative, knowing very well that Ugandans were communities that had governed themselves independently. You found Banyoro doing their thing, Basoga doing their thing, Baganda doing their thing. They needed something that would have been settled by decentralization. But decentralization was given to us in an omnibus way. And that's why the powers that were given by the Constitution in the decentralization thing have been taken back to the center. As I speak now, LOC 5 is one of the useless centers of power that we have. So much that they can have a council, they can come up with but they don't have even a budget. They don't have a budget that they run. The budgets are at best are at LOC 3 or the division level. But even the division, they get only 25% of what they're supposed to get.
Okay.
So for me, I think that the constitution in Uganda was hijacked somehow. Some people have said have been overthrown, but for me, I don't think that we have already reached to the level of being overthrown. The constitution has been hijacked by the government and led by the president. He has a lot of powers. In most cases, if for those who studied the French Revolution, we are going almost back to where the head of state is almost law.
Thank you, thank you.
And finally,
Just 1 minute.
finally, the other group which was given power to protect the constitution was the parliament. The parliament, in fact, all of them swear that their first duty is to protect the constitution. But also we forgot, we did not come out very clearly on who we wanted to be in that parliament. So we just said there will be representatives of the people who have equivalent of senior six and so on. And then we have now received the people in the parliament who have no idea about the constitution.
Thank you. So that also brings me to the point of institutionalizing democracy and safeguarding the separation of powers, especially between the executive and the legislature. How successful has this constitution been in doing this?
So to add on what Dr. Ojiambo and colleagues have shared, a constitution by nature is a text. If you don't understand its meaning, you can tear it into Rolex. you can write on it. You find
Light your cigarette.
yes, write your sigiri. The constitution is a spirit of the nation. A constitution is not self-executing. You don't just write a wonderful text and go waving, we have the constitution. So the MPs, and it's not that we hate Parliament, but we are disappointed with the performance of Parliament. The MPs, I'm sure some of them never open. You know, it's given free to them. Taxpayers' money. They swear and they go with it, a copy, because that's their main work. I'm sure some of them never open. So they just hold. They don't know what is inside. And for the political actors, they use it when it's convenient. When it's convenient to use it, or if they want to use it as a tool to achieve something. And this has been our dilemma. We came up and made the constitution without the spirit. So when you meet a person without a soul, usually they are heartless and they hurt society. So as we embraced and celebrated the constitution, there was no soul to beautify it into practice. For President Museveni and his group, they looked at an opportunity to, and with all due respect of Awich, President Museveni claims or pretends to be a Democrat, mainly for public relations. Public relations? Yes, that's why I said claims or pretends. For public relations, especially amongst the international community. So this document served that purpose. We have a constitution, we have a constitution. So a constitution is supposed to be a roadblock for everyone. That's why it has the duties of a citizen. Whether you don't want politics or whatever, Article 17, everybody has a role to play. The Constitution recognized or restored the sovereignty of the people as compared to subjects. So the question of are we subjects, are we sovereign, Article 1 solves it. We the people. If you look at the conclusion of the preamble, we hereby give ourselves and posterity this Constitution, but without a soul. Without a soul. So the institutions, I think the NRM deliberately set out to weaken institutions in order to fail the effective implementation of the Constitution. Parliament was brought on its knees, and the defining sentence for this Parliament and how it was brought on its knees is a statement made by President Museveni in Busoga, that give me MPs who can sleep and just wake up to vote.
Did he say that?
Yes. There's a video, there's a record, all records exist in Busoga. Give me MPs who can sleep and wake up to vote. What is the function of Parliament?
Legislate.
Protect the Constitution and promote constitutional governance. That's the main duty of Parliament. The rest are subsidiary or attendant to this. So in order to execute this function, you have a fountain of honor. I haven't read, and you will forgive me, viewers and colleagues, I haven't read the 3 constitutions to see how they defined the president. But the current constitution in Article 98 defines the president as the head of government, Commander-in-Chief of Defense Forces, fountain of honor. He is an embodiment of morals. He's the moral compass of a nation. And when you go to Article 99, Article 99 says the president derives executive power through protection of the Constitution. But President Museveni derives his power through the army, not the Constitution. And he uses the army to override the sovereignty of the people, suppress and weaken institutions, and overrun the Constitution. What am I saying? On 2 occasions, he has deployed the army to beat up Parliament in the chambers, to beat up MPs in the chambers of Parliament. The sanctity of the temple of democracy. You can visit all parts of Parliament, but you cannot go to the chambers unless you are an MP or an ex-official MP or a clerk of Parliament that is going to service a session of Parliament.
I'm a picket them there.
SFC has ran to the chambers of Parliament twice and bet MPs to pulp, opposition MPs, and nothing happens. So Afande, that's how the army you left has overthrown the Constitution. Or has helped President Museveni to overthrow the Constitution. So when you beat up MPs, you are whipping the sovereignty of the people. You are beating everybody. Because people exercise their power through electing their representatives.
Yeah.
And now you whip them
Which is what I'm saying. Yeah.
in the protected chambers of parliament. And then tomorrow you make a mockery of the constitution. I will protect, I will guard, so help me God. Maybe God should send thunder to strike these people. Because how can God help?
That was God of Abraham. This one, these days.
So,
Your prayer, yes.
so if you look at the amendments, selfish political amendments, so ordinarily, the constitution should be amended to deepen democracy.
That's right, yes.
In our case, the constitution has been amended to weaken
Democracy. True.
almost all the amendments. I don't know which progressive amendment has come through that people celebrate. So every amendment has sent Ugandans in tears. Because we advocated for a parliament that should sleep and only vote NRM. And that's what it does. Save for a referendum and later amendments that were done but already endorsed by the people to undo the mistake of Article 269. I don't think we have any progressive amendment to say, celebrate citizens, this has come through. No.
No.
It's not there. So if it were to the people that gave the views to Odochi and the majority citizens today, we would prefer a constitution where every amendment goes on a referendum. I know we have challenges with elections. We have challenges with electoral integrity. We have challenges with a so-called referendum. But at least it will be good if the constitution indeed belongs to the people. And given that over the 30 years, you know, a snake has been biting us, biting. So now we need to make sure all the holes where the snake is passing through are closed to avoid the bites. There is a proposal to go back to parliamentary democracy where, and it's been on table, serious people have been kept pushing it to civil society. We said we ignore because they, you know, like when you are laying a rat trap, government had learned a method of laying rat traps. You know, they tell you something, then you rush to media to oppose. Then in the process, you popularize their evil agenda, and then they come to implement. So we refused the rat trap of the parliamentary democracy. They kept throwing. So you meet them and say, by the way, what do you think? You would say, no, we shall not fall because we are the rant, the snake bites. So we said, this evil agenda, you must own it. We are not taking it to the people. So it stayed in the back, but it is something they are seriously promoting. It's not that parliamentary democracy is bad, but parliamentary democracy beautifies democracy where you have firm, efficient, and independent institutions, including strong political parties, as foundations for people's expression of their political rights and freedoms, which we don't have. So we need to build. So you cannot come after weakening everything, including the sanctity of the sovereignty of the people. You are whipping them with your SFC every day whenever they are opposed to your evil plots. Now you say, we have this system. It will not work. It will make our situation worse. So that's where we are. And in addition to these practices, so you have a situation where, for example, the institutions, because we have a firm framework for protection of fundamental rights and freedoms, the Bill of Rights, the Human Rights Commission, the courts of law, independence of judiciary under Article 126 and up to 129. Then we have the Human Rights Enforcement Act. But we have the most abused. Every UN session where Uganda is being peer reviewed, we have serious abuses of human rights in the country, even without any amendment in that aspect. There is zero implementation. So then you ask, and I go back to the issue of the soul. So the Constitution lacks the spirit, lacks the soul. The judiciary, I don't know how many habeas corpus orders have been granted by courts. There's a time after 2021 elections, one of the lawyers for the National Unity Platform had 260 unimplemented orders of habeas corpus. So you have a situation of open abductions, and as I conclude, I have taken much time. As I conclude, open abductions of citizens. And because President Museveni is the most senior in the region, so all the young dictators are just on monkey watch, monkey do. So you have young dictators in Kenya, young dictators in Tanzania on standby for monkey watch, monkey do. And now they are in conspiracy to abduct East African citizens. So if you are a problem in Uganda, you will be abducted in Kenya. If you are a problem in Kenya, you will be abducted in Tanzania. If you are a problem in Tanzania, you will go missing in Uganda. To the extent that we have 2 Kenyans missing who were abducted in Uganda.
In Chireka.
We still have Dr. Besigye who was abducted in Kenya. We have the case of Agatha and Boniface Mwanje abducted in Tanzania, and many others, by the way. So now the East African integration agenda have been reduced to the East African abduction agenda.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So the sovereignty of the people, in light of all these controversial amendments, term limits, removal of age limits, etc., what is your opinion when it comes to how the relationship between the citizens, the constitution, and the state has evolved over time?
You know, I think summarily, I feel that, although brief, my earlier submission and the submissions of my colleagues, particularly away from Mutare, my 2 colleagues, sort of summarize everything else. And very quickly, the whole thing becomes now very, very emotively heavy. And for me, who's an activist of 35 years, in fact 40, 36 actually, but 35 years, I can tell you that sometimes you go through this process, said, I've talked about this thing, I've written this, I've done this to the UN, I exposed this, I went to the EU, I took whatever. As early as 1992, Sarah, the European Union, the Commonwealth, the UN agencies, including some of the human rights organizations, were busy telling us, and I was leading predominantly some of these things, that look, Uganda has had a turbulent past. Mr. Museveni has brought the country together. What we are helping to do, because we're trying to expose the fact that they're using their tax dollars' money to sustain a regime that had been trampled onto the basic rights of the citizen most of the time. And these guys will say, No, we are strengthening institutions. Part of our other tax dollars is to support the judiciary. Part of our other tax dollars is to support the treasury. Part of the other tax dollars is to support the military. Part of the other tax dollars, you know. So then I go through these things and then I say, look, all these things in my names, and we're just going around and round and round. And that's why I'm saying that maybe earlier, and I've been very critical about this NRA constitution, and maybe sometimes it might end up being like Ochieno making the political thing. The point I'm making is that if only perhaps this thing happened as it did, and it was respected, the arguments that my colleagues are making here, you know, and as Sarah absolutely puts it, if only we got rid of Article 269 and the rest of the constitutional provisions, by and large, were respected, and today, 30 years later, I think the person who would be on the defensive is Ochieno. You know, that look, you know, I must concede that notwithstanding the false start, notwithstanding the lies and on the basis of some of the foundation on which this thing was built, it has actually stayed on. You know, but unfortunately, I can't tell you that. And the reason is, part of what Dr. Ojiambo says, and for which I'll sort of clarify, is the idea that, say, for instance, in 1986, NRA came and found a failed state. No, NRA did not find a failed state. I know this topic we've had here. You know, NRA found their friends, the Okellos. They had disorganized their state over 6 months.
Disorganization
they had disorganized the state within 6 months. So NRA was part of the 6 month disorganization of the Okellos, you know. But Sarah, between 1985 July and 1981, there's a functioning system and a functioning government, a democratic government. And as you rightly say, there was no circumstance under which a serving member of parliament would be stopped, you know, or pushed in the streets of Kampala. In between that time, constitutionalism, as the two of you are talking about. You know, there's no circumstance under which it would happen. And Judith, you know, Museveni was sworn in, you know, using the 1967 constitution. So again, Dr. Ojiambo, they used the constitution. That's part of my point, you know. So when they're swearing, what are they swearing to do? Swearing to do that, okay, we shall rule according to Bush law? No. There was a national constitution. They were taking over. All they're trying to do is to regularize. And part of the thing that Sarah said is, obviously, I use the word legalizing NRA, but possibly I was trying to talk about legitimizing NRA as a regime, meaning 1995 NRA constitution. And number two, the other constitution, 66 and 67. 66 was an interim constitution, and turns out the maker of the constitution, I think, Sarah, you're right, the point about the fountain of honor, as a matter of interest, actually exists only to this credit onto the NRA constitution. It does not exist in the rest of the other constitution, which, if only which the fountain of honor on this occasion went and did as it should be. It did not exist at the time. But even then, in 1966, Dr. Ojiambo, Godfrey Binaisa was the Attorney General at the time. And the difficulty with the process, of course, some of you guys would have been taught and trained and read books, you know, which were being pushed by sometimes emotive people who had emotional interest in some of the things that happened. Apparently, on the advice of the Attorney General and others, Milton Obote was hesitant to deal with basically to abolish the 1966 Constitution. And you've had this where he says that, look, you know, God, I cannot, to use your words, and that's why this came to me, and I think it's important for the audience in terms of history of our conflicted history of constitutionalism, that look, I cannot kill my own child. Milton Obote's reporter have said this to Godfrey Binaisa. I cannot kill my own child. And I repeat. And Binaisa said, no, sir, you will not be killing your child. You know, the child has already been killed, in this case, by the king, who was the president. You know, your job will only be to bury it. So think about it, Ugandans, when we're discussing this topic in a broader, objective way. So that's sort of the difficulty that a head of state or leaders that we give powers should think about. Now, if you go into the details of what led us to the 1966 crisis, was it power? Was it accumulation of power? Was it about conflicts? It was quite clearly the case that the president, with the Uganda kingdom, the president, in this case, Sir Edward Mutesa, and this is a topic that we don't like to talk about, you know, had taken the view that, well, they wanted central government out of Uganda. The poor Obote administration that was there had to make a decision. Do we have a Uganda to remain, or do we all march up to Nakasongola and then go to Bushenyi, Chinoni, and then leave Uganda? That was how fundamental it was, leading to the 1966 interim constitution, whatever the arguments made. And I'm saying that within the basis of some of what Sarah is talking about. What really are the grounds and circumstances under which you would go ahead and say, break a national constitution? Go to the 1967 constitution, because the other one was interim, Dr. Ojiambo. It was time for reflections and whether or not, say, in this case, we would have the powers of the kingdoms as established in 1962 sustainable. That's how they came in the idea of abolition of kingdoms. Again, a major thing in the national constitution, like it or not like. And then, how do you deal with the power of the president, the position of the presidency that had been created in 1963, and then the position of the prime minister as in 1962. My point is this. I think we should use this time as a moment for reflection, that regardless of where we are as a country, the makers of the NRA Constitution achieved their object by creating and legitimizing a system that has worked for themselves for 40 years. But whatever it is, if we are to critique, and we are critiquing some of the messes and wrongs that have gone on, what is it that we can actually genuinely do as citizens to be able to reclaim the power of our people, our own powers? And final thing, you know, when you talk about even the threat of wanting to take us back to a parliamentary system, which is a system I traditionally sort of supported. But what are the reasons, what are the grounds? Weak systems, you kill political parties. It is actually much more dangerous. Judith, to conclude, a good example. In 1967, and this was Sarah, Milton Obote was approached by John Babiha, who was then his vice president and minister for agriculture. And Babiha had found one district commissioner in Masaka. I've mentioned his name, I think, on this program. And he wanted the district commissioner to come in his office and push on the agricultural reform program as, I think, the PS. And I told about it. What I said, no, I said, well, it's not my job to appoint PSs. I know that's not my job. And told by Babiha that, look, you know how it is done. Babiha had to go to the head of the civil service, who was then the guy who later went on to become I've forgotten his name. But he went to the head of the civil service, and through the head of the civil service, this particular individual, of course, it was some sort of decline. The individual told me that story. My point is, you can see as old as then, with all the challenges, you can see the point and business of separation of powers. So yes, you will always have your way, but Comrade Awich, tell your horses, man. Try and behave. Once in a while, try and pretend. Let the judiciary play its beat, let the parliament do its beat, don't beat them up the way you do. And if you're able to do that successfully, I'll hand over to you.
Thank you. So maybe I'm not going to ask you any question, but because your colleagues have certainly said enough, and you've been also taking a lot of notes. So I'll just allow you to give your rebuttal, and then we'll just make our conclusions and call it a day.
First of all, I'd like to emphasize that this document, the 1995 Constitution, was such a beautiful document. It was so good to the extent that a prophet is not known in his home village or town, but in another village. So this made late Professor Kanyehamba and Professor Sempengo a darling in Kenya. We now praise the Kenyan Constitution, but they are drafted by these two. And why did the Kenyans invite them and make them consultants? Because they had seen what they'd done in the Ugandan constitutions. If you talk to Kenyan constitutional lawyers, they respect these two people. So that shows how good the document was, to the extent that Professor Kanyehamba and Professor Sempengo became the draftsmen of the Kenyan Constitution, which is praised there. So a prophet is not known in his own village, but he's known the other side. Even Jesus of Nazareth, they were saying this guy is a son of Joseph, this man who makes timber the other corner of the road. But when he went to other cities, he was son of God. So that is what happened to the Kanyehamba and the Constitution. Again, Sarah says, with due respect to me, and she goes ahead to hammer my chair and my president. Now, what respect have you given me? When
To you as an individual.
So, but the point here is, my chairman is a very, he respects the constitution. Sarah, I've been on the campaign trail. I was a focal person for President Museveni's campaign in Lango, 10 districts. And all the crowds you see coming out was my handwork. But in that, you can learn Museveni's constitutionalism, because no single rally has he given. People would come with demands and something you don't understand, the president would give you this, you say no.
He has not traveled with envelopes.
He says,
Because he moved in advance and gave the envelopes.
No, that is what you think, but it's not true. Because I'm
he has
even told,
granted the district.
I'm even told there's a falsification that to every turning up and every person you are giving 10. That is absolutely not true. I go to a radio station an evening before or a day before we move in the villages, calling people who are willing to come. And they come, no payment of money. But the point here is, Museveni, because of the constitutionalism, he is not giving anything. He's purely a candidate.
But
like
he
any
gave
other
a
candidate.
district.
So, district.
No, that was their prayer, that if you win, you know how
and he
districts are
pronounced
given.
himself.
He says, if I win, I will hear what you have said. That is it. So my candidate, so with due respect, you gave me due respect, you went ahead to hammer my chairman, and I have to clarify that. Then there is the issue of the incidents in parliament. I don't remember quite exactly now the facts leading to that. But I know that in all the 2 incidents where there was intervention, it was actually done to preempt a constitutional crisis. It was done to protect the constitution. It was done to protect the constitution. We can go to the
like
facts.
1966.
You could go to the facts later or in detail, but all I know is that the intent and purposes was actually to prevent occurrences that would lead to unconstitutional development.
Which
Beating up him
unconstitutional development, including
That's
the
why I'm
coffee
saying,
bill.
that's why I'm saying we need to go to the facts. We need to go to the facts, and I don't think we have that time. But I'm back to the challenges
You're not
of
the
the
moderator.
Constitution. I'm back to the challenges of the Constitution. Because one thing, Judith, is that the land issue remained very periphery. During the CA, I was there. Do you know that the members, the Cecilia Gwal and the Dohonek Yon, would argue with the Sam Kutesa, who were for the movement, very strongly on political systems. But when it came to land, they would come together. The landowners, because of the material interest, thanks be to Karl Marx and Franklin Engels, materialism, they would come together. You don't imagine that these are the same people who were so antagonistic in other things. So to the extent the land thing was nearly pushed away, the parliament will do that. And even parliament meandered around. And as I said earlier, a bad law will stagnate development. That is why we hear cost of the road, the Entebbe Express to the airport, very expensive because of the loopholes into land law, which came from the CA. Because CA meandered around, pushed it away, the Land Act meandered away, did what? So now you have a land law where it provides the land belongs to the citizens. Some people mistake that land belongs to the people. No, the Constitution doesn't say land belongs to the people. It says land belongs to the citizens. So you have a land law where somebody hears a road is passing in this place, it runs and buys a land there, and then starts making unbelievable quotation, and in the process either a road is not built or a road is built in a very abnormal cost. So these are part of the things that came, the romancing with the land provision in the Constitution. The other thing is failure to entrench the provisions and making it a blame to NRM. The CA was an independent body. Whatever claim they have, if they thought in their wisdom provisions were to be entrenched and they failed to entrench it and making it amendable, and it is amended, and you blame it to NRM, that is wrong. So it is their failure to properly identify all entrenchable provisions, and now they want us to carry the Lubengo. That is...
I wonder which is like saying, why did you dry your beautiful clothes outside on a wire for the sunshine. And the May I was passing, I got attracted. It's your problem.
I see.
That is not an example. The other loophole I'm seeing in the Constitution is it has giving mandates to mandate holders who don't seem to exercise it. Either they bring it on finance and logistics, I don't know. For example, you have the mandate of civic education. Human Rights Commission and Electoral Commission are supposed to do this. But they have really barely performed in that sector, to the extent that you have a very poor voter turnout in electoral matters, because people are not aware. So the Constitution gave these mandates there, and yet these mandates are difficult to exercise, or they have failed to exercise. I see that as a loophole in the Constitution. Something I also see like maybe we would have thought about it is the case of religious freedom. Well, sometimes it's a no-go area, people don't want to talk about it, but look, I stay in an Akrite land which was for Akrite estate, but later on sold to individuals in Nansana. That is in Nansana, near. But when I leave my place, which is about a kilometer to the main road, do you know that reaching the road, I see 10 churches. There are more churches than shops. And now we even fear and romance about the exploitative tendencies.
The sign of poverty.
Exploitative tendencies of people who pretend to be under the guise of religious freedom. I don't think this is the same position in other jurisdictions, like in Rwanda, for example, or even German. I don't think you have this kind of thing. So maybe it could have been thought about, but I am saying to every problem there's a solution. You wouldn't have to think about it. So I thought we needed to have thought about it more deeply. Otherwise, the situation is so unregulated and guarded that it has exposed many of our people to exploitation. It has exposed many of our people to actually being non-productive, and a lot of issues go around there. So to me, I still see like these are some of the weaknesses in the Constitution. And as I said earlier, any document is, a Constitution is a living document. We shall keep living with it, and we shall keep amending it as it is.
Thank you very much. And that's your conclusion. I think I'll just work backwards. Joseph, in just about a minute or less, your parting shots as we reflect on this 30 years of the Constitution.
The NRA Constitution is here. It has served 30 years. It has been amended as if it was, some draft for some PhD research. But Ugandans ought to know that we had 3 constitutions before, and I don't know how many amendments were made and the circumstances in which they were prepared. Because we are discussing constitutionalism and the future, Ugandans ought to know that they were literally hoodwinked to legitimize a system that is crude. But this is where we are, I think, and I think as two of my colleagues talked about constitutionalism, where you have people and leaders who are responsible, people who love and committed their countries, and people who know that leadership comes with responsibilities. Possibly you don't necessarily even need a very good constitution, because people should be able to have checks and balances. I've worked in public organizations around the world, and in many cases, some of the things that I tell particularly many of the young people whom I deal with and train and mentor, sometimes actually quite informally when you sit with them over a cup of tea. He says, but it's quite common sense that an elder asks you to go and buy an item off the road, and then please surely just make sure they bring the change that it is. And somebody comes and you see a lady who's expectant of somebody's not particular field, leave a seat for them. You should be able to know that when things comes with the Constitution, the things that you should touch, you should not touch. The Secretariat of Parliament, it's extraordinary space. UBC, we're just struggling to recover over the fact the 1967 Sixth Constitution and the abolition of kingdoms. Although, as I said, without that, the nation state would not exist as it is today. That is how difficult it is. How dare you go ahead and desecrate Parliament like this guy is sending soldiers? In this case, they've gotten away with it. Imagine The other day, you talk
Judith,
about...
are you opening a debate or
and I'm
conclusion?
concluding.
Yeah, Joseph,
This entire school guy, because they think they own the country, so they think they own all debate. But look, let me conclude in the Muri way. I don't know how entire school guys do. You find women, parliamentarians in front of parliament going to protest, and they are arrested and detained. And they say, are we really in a nation state which is governed by rules and by laws? No. Many of the things that are actually happening are, yes, partly as a result of this constitution, but I think the system is just rotten.
Thank you. Dr. Sarah.
The strength of any constitution lies in the discipline and restraint of those who wield power,
Yes.
and the vigilance of the people who own the constitutions. Unless Ugandans own the constitution and make it a no-go area for abuse, we shall keep in this zigzag.
Thank you.
That is a voluntary conclusion.
Lastly,
As I said earlier, the constitution was a very good health baby that we had a lot of hope in, and a baby that was going to help us to see the future. Unfortunately, the baby was attacked by Kwashako. The thing now is to treat the baby of Kwashako, and once the Kwashako is out of the baby can still grow and become the useful person that we hoped to have. So the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda need a good treatment, and that treatment can only be given by good leaders and citizens who understand their responsibility.
I also make a conclusion. The 1995 Constitution is a good Constitution. It's a living document. We should nurture it to grow.
well, thank you very much for your insights, retired Major Awich Pollar, Mr. Joseph Ochieno, Dr. Sarah Bireete, and you, Dr. Robert Ojiambo. My name is Judith Atim. Thank you very much to all of you for watching, and do drop us a comment. We've been taking a reflection on the 30 years of the 1995 Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, its achievements, the challenges faced, and also the future ahead. Of course, looking at its role in shaping or determining the destiny of Uganda. This is the Citizens Chat Show. We'll be back next week, same time. Do join us then. Happy Independence Week, and also happy 30 years of the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Have yourselves a wonderful time.